Get your ass home and take care of your kids." The rude shout echoed through the Aegis Pavilion in Houston. Director Damian Drake looked down at Kendrick Washington with pure disgust. He did not know this man in ragged Goodwill clothes was a legendary Delta Force soldier. Kendrick brought his sick 8-year-old daughter here for the $350,000 job to save her life. He had to hold back under the violent bullying of the giant, Garrick Stone. A journey of blood, betrayal, and dark forces was waiting for him. Will a father's instinct turn Kendrick into the most dangerous weapon? But to understand why a strong man would bow his head to insults, we must look at his quiet life before this day. Kendrick Washington lived in a small rented apartment on the east side of Houston. The rent was exactly $413 a month. The whole place measured only 25 square feet. It smelled like old motor oil and rubbing alcohol. Sometimes the smell of children's medicine drifted through the air too. Every morning started at 4:47 sharp. No later, no earlier. Kendrick sat at a tiny wooden desk under a single lamp. He fixed old watches with a small pair of tweezers. His fingers moved with careful, steady patience. Each small repair earned him a few dollars. Every single dollar mattered now. At 6 in the morning, he moved to the kitchen. He poured exactly 2.5 milliliters of heart medicine into a chipped plastic cup. His daughter, Zuri, was 8 years old. Her heart had been weak since the day she was born. The doctors called it a rare condition. Kendrick simply called it her fight. On the small kitchen table sat a silver necklace. It was worn smooth from years of gentle touching. It belonged to Zuri's mother, who had passed away 3 years earlier. Inside the necklace was a tiny music box. It made a soft, steady ticking sound, almost like a small heartbeat. In a locked drawer across the room sat a small wooden box. Inside was an old military compass, scratched and worn along its edges. There were no papers beside it, no medals, no proof that Kendrick had ever served his country in any way. All of that had been quietly erased, on purpose, a long time ago. Neighbors in the building barely knew him. They saw a quiet man, who kept to himself, who nodded politely in the hallway, but never stopped to talk. Some assumed he worked nights somewhere. Others assumed nothing at all, too busy with their own troubles to notice him. Kendrick kept a small calendar taped to the fridge. Every single day, he marked an X in red marker, counting down towards Zuri's next hospital checkup. The numbers on that calendar felt heavier than any weight he had ever carried before, heavier than any mission from his old life. Kendrick never sighed in front of his daughter. Not once, not ever. But his jaw would tighten every time he looked at the bright red hospital bill sitting next to Zuri's medicine bottle. "Today we're going somewhere very big, Zuri," he said one morning, tying his old shoes. "Just bring your mermaid backpack, okay?" Zuri smiled and nodded right away. She trusted her father completely, without a single doubt. But fate does not let a man like Kendrick hide in the shadows forever. Somewhere out there, the world was about to come looking for him. At the free clinic in the 5th ward, an old air conditioner rattled weakly in the window. It fought a losing battle against the 97-degree heat pressing in from outside. The heart doctor gave Kendrick the news in a slow, careful voice. Zuri's heartbeat had dropped below 43 beats per minute. That was dangerously low for a girl her age. She needed a new kind of heart device right away. It would help keep her small heart beating in a steady rhythm. The full cost at Texas Children's Hospital came to exactly $310,000. The hospital needed a deposit within 48 hours. If not, they would have to give the surgery slot to the next child on the list. On the bus ride home, the old radio crackled with a strange news story. A space company called Etheris was holding a special tryout event. They wanted to hire one personal bodyguard for their CEO, a woman named Olivia Knight. The starting pay was $350,000 a year. The event would take place at a building called Aegis Pavilion. Kendrick's fingers gripped the cold metal bar above his seat. Old paint flaked off under the pressure of his grip. Cold sweat ran slowly down his back, soaking into his worn shirt. A hospital worker's voice echoed again in his memory. "If we don't get a deposit by tomorrow afternoon, we have to give the slot to the next patient." Zuri sat quietly on the exam table the whole time, swinging her legs back and forth, humming a small tune to herself. She did not fully understand the numbers the doctor spoke. She only understood the worried look on her father's face, one she had learned to recognize since she was very small. "Am I going to be okay, Dad?" she asked, once the doctor had stepped out of the room. Kendrick forced a small, steady smile onto his face. "Always, baby girl," he said. "I promise you that." He meant every single word, even though he had no idea yet how he would keep it. On the walk back to the bus stop, Kendrick passed a row of shiny office buildings downtown. Men in expensive suits walked briskly past him, talking on their phones, never once glancing his way. For a brief moment, he wondered what it must feel like to never worry about money at all. He stopped at a corner store and bought Zuri a small orange juice, with the last few coins in his pocket. She sipped it happily the rest of the way home, humming her little tune. She had no idea about the storm building around her small heart. A father can survive almost any kind of pain in this world, but no father can stand still and watch his child's breath slowly fade away. The next day, Kendrick stood across the street from Aegis Pavilion. The bus stop bench nearby was rusted and cracked. Thick diesel smoke drifted through the hot, heavy air. He hesitated at the entrance for a long moment. Stepping into this world of the rich meant facing modern security scanners. Those machines could scan his eyes in seconds. They could find hidden traces of a man who was supposed to no longer exist. He was a soldier, wiped from every government file, after one secret mission long ago, deep in a place called Mogadishu. His greatest fear was simple and heavy. If his true identity came out now, old enemies hiding in the shadows might come looking for Zuri. Zuri gently tugged on the sleeve of his worn Goodwill jacket. She reached up and offered him her mother's silver necklace. Kendrick knelt down slowly on the hot, cracking concrete. He took the necklace from her small, warm hand. He closed his eyes for a long moment. His chest rose and fell as he tried hard to steady himself. "Mom said this necklace will protect you when you go do good work," Zuri said softly, looking up at him. "You can borrow it today." When a promise made to someone who has passed meets the survival of a living child, no fear on earth can stand in the way. For a long moment, Kendrick stood frozen at the entrance, unable to take that final step forward. Memories flashed behind his eyes, gunfire in a narrow alley, a burning building, the faces of men he could never talk about to anyone. He pushed those memories down hard, the way he always did, and forced his feet to move. He thought about turning around twice. Each time, he glanced down at Zuri's small hand wrapped tightly around his. That was enough. It was always enough. Fear could wait outside these doors. His daughter could not. Inside, a worn-out changing room sat tucked behind the main hall of Aegis Pavilion. It smelled like gun oil resting on old, cracked tile floors. Kendrick led Zuri gently to a quiet corner. Two large security guards stopped him almost right away. They assumed he was a homeless man who had wandered in by mistake. Then an old janitor stepped forward from the shadows. His name was Marcus Vance. Everyone around here called him Old Dog. He was 61 years old and walked with a slight limp in his left leg. Marcus looked closely at the calluses on Kendrick's hands. He noticed the thick, hardened skin between his thumb and finger. Those were the marks of a man who had fired thousands of rounds every single year. Marcus understood immediately what kind of man stood before him. Quietly, without a word to anyone else, Marcus slipped Kendrick a side entrance pass. He also handed him a sealed bottle of cold water. He warned him in a low voice about a man named Damian Drake and the hungry mercenaries waiting somewhere inside. Marcus placed a firm hand on Kendrick's shoulder. Kendrick did not flinch or step away. His shoulder felt like solid stone under the old man's palm. Their eyes met for a moment, in the quiet understanding shared only by old soldiers. Marcus glanced over his shoulder, checking that no one else was watching them. "Drake runs this place like his own private kingdom," he added quietly. "He doesn't like surprises. And you, my friend, are a very big surprise." He tucked the pass into Kendrick's jacket pocket himself, careful and quick. "Those men in their fight for money and glory," Marcus said. "You're fighting for something else entirely. Don't let them ever smell your kindness." A warning from someone who has walked the same road before always carries the scent of old, unhealed scars. Marcus led them through a side hallway lined with old photos of past security teams. He pointed at one faded picture near the end. I used to guard desert supply convoys, he said quietly. Lost this leg doing it. Nobody remembers my name anymore. Kendrick nodded once and said nothing. Some things did not need any words at all. Zuri looked up at the old photos with wide, curious eyes. Were you a hero too, Mr. Marcus? She asked softly. Marcus gave her a tired smile. Just a guy who did his job, he said gently. Same as your dad is about to do today. He winked at her, and she giggled quietly for the first time all morning. The main hall of Aegis Pavilion stretched wide and impossibly tall, nearly 40 feet high. Bulletproof glass, 3 inches thick, looked out over a private helicopter landing pad. Kendrick signed a waiver form at the front desk. It said he would not sue anyone if he got hurt during the tryout. He walked Zuri over to a bench set aside for family members. He placed her mermaid backpack gently beside her and gave her careful instructions to stay put. The moment they stepped further inside, all 29 other applicants turned to stare. Every single one of them was a former Special Forces soldier. They wore expensive tactical gear and carried shiny handguns from top gun brands. From a balcony high above, Damian Drake looked down, with pure disgust written across his face. Kendrick deliberately lowered his shoulders as he walked. He dragged his feet just slightly. He wanted to hide his naturally sharp, military posture from watching eyes. Aegis Pavilion is here to find a steel shield for our CEO, Drake announced coldly, through a small microphone clipped to his collar. Not to run a free daycare center for homeless people. Laughter rippled through the crowd of applicants. A few of them shook their heads, muttering about wasted time. One man, near the front, spat on the floor near Kendrick's worn shoes, just to make his contempt clear. Kendrick said nothing. He simply guided Zuri toward her bench, his hand steady on her small shoulder. Zuri sat down and pulled her mermaid backpack onto her lap, hugging it close. I'll be good, Dad, she whispered. I promise. Kendrick knelt beside her one more time, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. I know you will, Princess, he said softly. Just stay right here for me. When the heavy steel doors of the arena finally close, a gentle man must step aside. He makes room for the ghost of an old battlefield. The testing room glowed under bright, harsh overhead lights. A mock city street had been built for realistic combat drills. The first test was a reflex shooting drill against moving targets. Kendrick hit every single target cleanly, but he aimed only for shoulders and legs, never anything deadly or fatal. He scored exactly 73 points out of 100 possible, just enough to pass, without drawing too much attention his way. Then came real trouble. A huge man named Garrick Stone, nicknamed the Anvil, kept shoving his heavy shoulder into Kendrick during the drills. Stone mocked Kendrick's poor, worn clothes out loud. He mocked Zuri's illness too, right in front of everyone. At that exact moment, a woman walked calmly into the room. Her name was Olivia Knight, the 33-year-old CEO of Ethris. She wore a finely tailored navy suit, sharp and clean. She noticed how completely calm Kendrick stood in the middle of all that noise and chaos. Drake tried to suggest cutting Kendrick from the final list. He said Kendrick did not look the part for such important work. Olivia disagreed right away, without hesitation. She said she wanted to see real skill, not just a nice, expensive outfit. When Stone slammed his shoulder into Kendrick yet again, Kendrick's arm muscles tightened like cold, hardened steel underneath his sleeve. Stone felt like he had just hit a solid concrete pillar. But Kendrick quickly faked a small stumble and stepped back, hiding his true strength. Hey, black boy, Stone sneered, loud enough for the whole room to hear. If your kid dies on that bench over there, do you still get the insurance money? The most dangerous predator in any room often digs his own grave the moment he pokes a sleeping lion. A second test followed soon after, this one testing endurance under a heavy pack. Each applicant had to carry 70 pounds of gear across the mock street, again and again, until only a few remained standing. Kendrick paced himself carefully. He let 2 other men finish just ahead of him, hiding his true stamina behind a slow, tired shuffle. Olivia watched from the side the entire time, arms crossed, saying little. She noticed something odd. Every time Kendrick seemed close to failing, He somehow found just enough strength to keep going, never falling behind, never truly struggling. She filed that thought away quietly, without saying a word to anyone. Drake leaned toward one of his assistants during the drill. "Watch this one," he muttered, nodding toward Kendrick. "Something feels wrong about him." His assistant only shrugged. To everyone else in the room, Kendrick still looked like nothing more than a tired, desperate man trying his best. Garrick Stone finished the endurance drill far ahead of everyone else, dropping his heavy pack with a loud, proud thud. He flexed his arms for the small crowd watching, from the sidelines, grinning wide. "Anyone else want to try keeping up?" he shouted, looking straight at Kendrick with a mocking smirk. Kendrick said nothing back. He simply set his own pack down quietly, breathing steady and even, and walked toward the water station, without a single word. Inside, his heart stayed calm and cold, the way it always did before real danger. Stone's insults meant nothing to a man who had survived far worse than words. Next came the close combat area, ringed by a tall chain-link fence. The smell of rubbing alcohol mixed with old, worn leather mats on the floor. The semifinal rounds moved quickly, one applicant after another falling away. Some quit from exhaustion. Others simply could not keep pace with the brutal schedule of drills. The room grew quieter, with each passing hour, tension building like a held breath. Marcus watched from a corner near the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing to anyone. Every so often, his eyes drifted toward Zuri's bench, making sure no one bothered her, while her father fought on the mats nearby. It was a small, quiet kindness, one nobody else in the room seemed to notice. Olivia stood near the balcony railing above, watching the final two fighters prepare. She had seen dozens of tryouts, over the years, full of loud, boastful men eager to prove themselves. Kendrick's silence felt different, heavier somehow, like a held breath, before a storm finally breaks. By now, only two applicants remained standing for the final spot beside the CEO, Garrick Stone and Kendrick Washington. Before stepping onto the mat, Stone walked past Zuri's bench on purpose, slow and deliberate. He kicked her metal lunchbox hard across the floor. Her mother's silver necklace flew out and hit the ground, gaining a long, ugly scratch across its surface. Zuri flinched hard and pulled her knees up to her chest. The medical bracelet on her wrist blinked bright red, warning everyone that her heart rate had spiked sharply from fear. Kendrick crossed the room and bent down. He picked the necklace up gently from the cold floor. He rubbed his thumb slowly over the fresh scratch, feeling its rough edge. His eyes did not turn red with sudden rage. Instead, his pupils shrank into two small, cold, focused points. A single vein pulsed once, hard, at his left temple. "Princess," he whispered softly to Zuri, kneeling beside her. "Close your eyes and count to 10 for me, okay?" When a small child's counting begins, the whole noisy world seems to lose all of its sound at once. Zuri closed her eyes tightly. 1, 2, she began, in her small, sweet, trembling voice. Garrick Stone threw a heavy punch, with the crushing force of over 400 pounds, aimed straight at Kendrick's jaw. Kendrick did not step back an inch. He tilted his head only 3 small inches to the side. He slid his arm smoothly under Stone's swinging arm. He used the giant man's own forward momentum against him, throwing him down to the mat in one clean, perfect motion. Stone landed hard flat on his back, the air punched out of his lungs. Kendrick shifted his weight instantly and smoothly. He locked Stone's shoulder tightly in a controlled arm bar. He heard the small, sharp crack of a joint straining hard under pressure, but he stopped just before it could actually break. Stone passed out completely from the pain and lack of air. Not a single drop of blood ever touched the training mat. 9, 10, Zuri finished counting softly. She slowly opened her eyes. Kendrick stood back up straight. He brushed invisible dust off his old Goodwill blazer, calm as ever. He smiled gently and took his daughter's small hand in his. He did not even glance down at the beaten man lying motionless on the floor. "I'm done here," Kendrick said quietly. "Let's go, sweetheart." The whole room fell into complete, stunned silence. But the real fight, the one that truly mattered, was only just beginning behind the glass walls high above. Up on the 13th floor, Olivia Knight kept her own private office. Warm afternoon sunlight poured through the tall windows. It looked out over the distant buildings of the Johnson Space Center. Olivia signed the official security contract herself, right there at her desk. It was worth $350,000 a year, guaranteed. She also wrote Kendrick an advance check for $100,000 on the spot, so he could pay the hospital immediately, without any delay. Even after winning such a huge prize, Kendrick showed no pride and no excitement at all. He simply asked Marcus to bring Zuri a warm cup of milk from the kitchen down the hall. While waiting quietly, old instincts kicked back in, without him even trying. Kendrick scanned every single corner of the room with careful eyes. He spotted 3 hidden cameras that were not part of the building's normal, approved security plan. All 3 of them pointed directly at Olivia's desk. He walked over and ran one finger slowly along the edge of a wall painting, right where one camera hid behind the frame. The fine layer of dust on his fingertip told him something important. This camera had been installed less than 48 hours ago. I read your file before today, Olivia said, watching him closely. It's clean, almost too clean to be real. But today, you saved my dignity in front of everyone. Kendrick simply nodded and thanked her, keeping his answers short and calm. He did not explain where his skills had come from. Olivia did not push him for more, though curiosity flickered briefly behind her eyes. Some questions, she decided, were better left unasked for now. Marcus appeared at the door a moment later, carrying a small cup of warm milk on a tray. He set it down gently in front of Zuri, who had wandered in holding her father's hand. Careful now, it's hot, he said kindly. Zuri thanked him with a small, polite bow, the way her mother had once taught her. Watching the two of them together, Olivia felt something shift quietly inside her chest. She had met plenty of powerful men in her career. None of them had ever looked at a paycheck the way Kendrick did, like it was simply a tool, never a trophy. Before leaving her office, Kendrick paused by the door. "Ma'am, you might want to have your security team swept again," he said carefully, choosing his words with care. "Some things around here aren't exactly what they look like." Olivia studied his face for a long moment, sensing there was more he was not saying. "Noted," she replied simply, filing his warning away for later. She had learned long ago to trust instincts sharper than her own, especially when they came from someone who clearly did not waste words. That warning would matter more than she could guess, and very soon. A reward that comes this easily is often just the bait sitting inside a trap that has already been carefully set. That night, the Houston Space Center exhibit hall glowed softly under warm event lights. Giant pieces of a real Saturn V rocket cast long, eerie shadows stretching across the polished floor. Etheris was hosting a big fundraising gala that evening. Hundreds of important guests filled the enormous hall, laughing and talking. Waiters moved quietly between the crowd, carrying trays of small appetizers and tall glasses of sparkling water. A string quartet played softly near the main stage, filling the hall with gentle, elegant music. Reporters from local news stations stood near the entrance, cameras ready. They hoped to catch a few words from Olivia Knight about her newest rocket engine designs. Investors in expensive suits shook hands and traded business cards, their laughter echoing off the tall glass ceiling above them. Kendrick, now dressed in a sharp black suit, stayed close to Olivia's side the entire time. Zuri sat safely nearby in a flight simulator room, happily pretending to fly a real spaceship. Earlier that evening, Kendrick had walked the entire building twice, checking every exit and every hallway. He memorized the location of every fire door, every stairwell, every dark corner. Old habits from another life, habits he thought he had buried for good, quietly came back to him. Zuri had begged to see the giant rocket engines up close, before heading to the simulator room. Kendrick walked beside her slowly, pointing out the huge metal nozzles and the rows of small round windows. "Someday you could fly one of these," he told her. She grinned wide and said she would rather stay right here on the ground with him. Suddenly, without any warning, every light in the building went completely dark. The backup generators had been shut down on purpose, deep inside the main machine room. Screams rippled through the crowd as emergency floodlights flickered weakly, then died completely. Guests stumbled in the darkness, bumping into tables and chairs, their phone flashlights cutting thin beams through the black smoke slowly filling the hall. Damian Drake stepped calmly out of the darkness, flanked by a team of armed mercenaries from a private group called Vanguard Defense. He announced loudly that he was taking over the building tonight. He wanted to force Olivia to sign away her company's most valuable rocket engine technology. Drake had planned this night for months, ever since Vanguard Defense first offered him a fortune for the stolen designs. He believed his own security cameras, the ones he had personally approved months earlier, would erase any proof of what happened tonight. He never once suspected another set of eyes was already watching him. In the pitch darkness, Kendrick moved fast towards Zuri's simulator room. He locked the heavy door using his own private security code. He made absolutely sure the small room was completely soundproof from the outside. His face turned cold and sharply focused, the look of a true Delta soldier returning at last. "Find the black bodyguard and his kid," Drake barked harshly into his radio. "Send them both to hell first, before anyone else." Darkness may frighten most ordinary people badly, but for a true Delta legend, darkness always feels just like coming home. Beneath the towering Saturn V rocket, the space around them turned pitch black. Only a single red emergency light blinked slowly every 3 long seconds. 7 armed men wearing night vision goggles moved carefully through the dark, hunting for Kendrick. Kendrick stood perfectly still near Zuri's glass simulator pod, patient and silent. He did not reach for a gun at all. Instead, he watched the faint red reflection bouncing off the thick glass surface. He tracked every single man moving quietly behind him, without ever once turning his head around. One by one, he took the armed men down in complete, total silence. He kept every single sound under 20 decibels, careful and precise, so that Zuri would never wake up scared inside her small glass pod. The first man never even saw him coming, a hand pressed firmly over his mouth before he crumpled to the floor. The second man reached for his radio, but Kendrick was already behind him, moving faster than the beam of his own flashlight. Each takedown lasted only a few seconds, quiet and controlled, like a shadow passing briefly over the wall. Near the fourth man, Kendrick paused for half a second, listening carefully to the faint hum of the building's backup systems. He counted the remaining footsteps in his head, 3 men left, then 2, then none. His breathing stayed slow, and even the entire time, never once rushed, never once loud. Then Kendrick finally reached Damian Drake, who stood there holding Olivia hostage at gunpoint. Drake tried desperately to trigger a self-destruct system, hoping to erase all the evidence against him. But it was already far too late for him. Marcus had secretly installed his own independent camera system earlier that same day. It had already recorded Drake's entire confession, word for word, and had already sent it straight to the FBI's secure servers. Kendrick gripped Drake's wrist hard, twisting it sharply. The bone inside cracked, with a sharp, ugly sound that echoed briefly. Drake dropped hard to his knees, his face draining to a pale, sickly gray from the sudden, sharp pain. "Your process has one small flaw," Kendrick said quietly, staring straight into his eyes. "That flaw is me." When the bright lights finally come back on, a traitor slowly realizes his whole game ended long before it even truly began. The next morning, warm sunlight filled a quiet recovery room at Texas Children's Hospital. Fresh yellow flowers sat neatly on the wide windowsill, catching the early light. Federal agents had already taken Damian Drake and all his men away sometime in the night. Olivia Knight was completely safe and unharmed now. She publicly announced she was cutting every single tie, with Vanguard Defense for good, effective immediately. Zuri's heart surgery had gone perfectly, exactly as the doctors had hoped. The new device, worth a full $310,000, was working exactly as it should inside her small chest. Kendrick sat quietly beside her hospital bed, watching her sleep peacefully. He held her small hand gently in his own rough one. The heart monitor beside her blinked a steady green light, showing a healthy 72 beats per minute, calm and even. On the soft pillow beside her lay the silver necklace, carefully straightened out again, with a small pair of pliers, good as new. Zuri slowly opened her eyes, blinking against the morning light. She gave her father a weak, happy smile from the pillow. Kendrick leaned down close and pressed his forehead gently against hers. A single warm tear rolled slowly down onto her soft cheek. He let out one long, deep breath, full of pure, quiet relief. "Dad, I counted all the way to 10 in my dream," Zuri whispered softly. "You protected me, right?" "That's right, Princess," Kendrick answered, his voice thick with emotion. "From now on, I will always be right here beside you." Marcus stopped by later, that morning, carrying a small stuffed mermaid he had found in the hospital gift shop. He set it gently on the bed beside Zuri, who hugged it right away, with a bright, tired smile. "Figured she needed a friend for her collection," Marcus said, giving Kendrick a small nod. Olivia visited too, later that same afternoon, dressed simply this time, without her usual sharp suit. She sat quietly beside the bed for a while, watching Zuri sleep peacefully. Before leaving, she promised Kendrick that his job would always be waiting for him, for as long as he wanted it. Weeks later, Kendrick and Zuri moved into a small house with a real yard not far from the hospital. The silver necklace hung safely on a hook by the front door, catching the morning light every single day. Kendrick still woke early out of habit, but now he made pancakes instead of fixing watches. Zuri started going to school full-time, something she had never been able to do before. She made friends quickly, showing off her mermaid backpack to anyone who would look. Her heart monitor app buzzed steady and calm on Kendrick's phone all day long, a small comfort he checked more than he liked to admit. On weekends, Marcus would stop by with his old fishing rods, and the three of them would spend afternoons at a quiet lake nearby. Kendrick taught Zuri how to cast a line, laughing softly when she got her hook stuck in a low branch instead of the water. Sometimes, late at night, Kendrick still checked the locks twice before bed, an old habit from another life that never fully faded. But the fear that once lived behind his eyes had quietly changed into something softer, something closer to peace. Neighbors who once ignored him now waved from their porches, calling him by name. He waved back every time, standing a little taller than before, no longer hiding his true self behind lowered shoulders and a slow, careful walk. Every evening, before bed, Zuri wound the tiny music box hidden inside her mother's necklace. The soft, steady ticking filled the quiet room like a small, gentle promise. Kendrick would sit beside her until she fell asleep, listening to that same steady rhythm every single night. It reminded him, softly and surely, why he had walked through those doors that hot, uncertain day, and why he would walk through them again. Every year, on the day of Zuri's surgery, they visited the hospital together, bringing flowers for the nurses who had cared for her. It became a small, quiet tradition, one that reminded them both how far they had come since that hot, desperate day at Aegis Pavilion. The most dangerous weapon in this entire world is not a gun. It is not the deadly skill of a trained soldier, no matter how sharp. It is simply the heart of a father. He is ready to move heaven and earth just to keep his child's small heartbeat steady, safe, and strong forever.